Travel and change of place impart new vigor to the mind. So says the Stoic philosopher Seneca. Many Filipinos are relieved as travel both locally and internationally are beginning to open again. But what do medicine and psychology tell us about traveling? In today's episode, we'll explore the benefits of traveling and why this can be good for your health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to Medtalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Our guests are here today to give insights on the health benefits of traveling. With us is Luis Angelo R. Villaruel. He's a psychologist from the University of Santo Tomas Hospital and founder of Kintsugi Sai. Also with us is Mr. Aaron Palabyab. He's a filmmaker and content creator and travel extraordinaire. Thanks for joining us on the program to the both of you. Now, it's often said that going on a vacation or a trip outside the home for a certain period of time can clear the mind. Now, I'll start the conversation with Luis. How does traveling affect our mental health? How can it clear our mind? Why is it recommended for people to travel, get out of a certain situation who experience stress, maybe sadness or even grief?
Definitely, traveling can affect how one experiences their daily lives, no? It gives us a reset, quote unquote. It gives us that opportunity to take a break. It provides stress relief, obviously. When we consider traveling as a form of vacation or as a reward, an incentive that we set for ourselves, it allows us to experience new and positive experiences which can fight off different types of mental health problems, no? For example, we feel a little too stagnant. Trying out new things can be exciting, can be great for us to be able to lift up our mood and to get us going. It can even improve our creativity, for example, by exposing us to things or to cultures that we are not so aware of. So if we go to a different country, or even here in the Philippines, we just visit provinces, and we've been here in Metro Manila our whole lives, it opens us up to a lot of different things, so a lot of different opportunities, things that we don't usually get in our everyday lives.
Now, Aaron, is there some truth to what Luis said in the case of you? Is traveling part of something that you don't get out of when you don't travel?
Absolutely. I agree 100% with everything he said. Especially, I think, for us who live in big cities, particularly a city like Metro Manila, we don't realize until we get out, I think, maybe how closed in our minds, our consciousness have become. And when we travel, we experience a literal and figurative opening up, I think, of the mind. We see new possibilities, we're able to break old patterns, and that just opens up the doors to growth, I think, in terms of what you get out of travel. And I think that's why it's such a rich experience.
That's something that I and I'm sure our viewers long to achieve whenever we do travel. Now, because our bodies are designed to move. That's why psychologists recommend exercising so our bodies can produce happy hormones. Now, Luis, how does going on a trip manage our risks of, say, depression or anxiety, or overall, how can it manage our mental health?
So when we talk about depression, it's the more common one is stagnancy. No? That's the more common feeling that people experience. It's like we're unable to do things or we're helpless to do certain things. So traveling gets us out there, gets us moving. As one of the things that us psychologists, we actually recommend for people who have depression is to just get moving, to find a point where one can start moving. And traveling in itself can become that starting point for certain people. Because when you feel like you're in a spiral or you're in a rump, it's kind of hard to find or identify that starting point at times. But when you have a reset, yeah, like for travel, it gives you that opportunity. But other than that, even just the physiological things that we go through when we travel, the sun, being outside, being on the beach, allowing yourself to be out, unlike us usually being stuck here in maybe feeling some cabin fever, the sun helps us produce those happy hormones you were talking about, some serotonin, no? Which can help boost our mental well-being.
And actually, in 2013, a study by the American Psychological Association also claims that sojourners, or people who stay away from home temporarily, are less emotionally reactive to day-to-day changes, improving emotional stability. Aaron, does that apply to you? Do you think traveling has been able to make you a calmer person, a more chill person, being able to react to day-to-day stresses in life better?
That is really 100% accurate. And it's not just an instant thing, it is a process. Because, when it comes to anxiety, personally, I'm kind of an anxious person. I would say I'm more anxious than most people you would consider adventurous. But I think what travel teaches you, especially if you go on an extended trip to somewhere really unfamiliar, the further you get out of your comfort zone or out of your routine, the more you deal with situations and the more you realize that you can overcome situations. And it's this mindset and practice of overcoming maybe unexpected things that I think can slowly help you overcome your anxiety when dealing with anything in life. You can say, I went through this in this isolated place in the Philippines or another country. I can get through what I'm going through today.
Now, Luis, a lot of people who aren't as well traveled, let's use Aaron as an example, may see traveling as a cause for stress, as a cause for anxiety, especially for the one who is paying for the travel itself. How can you reconcile that? How can traveling, once again, be something that is not stressful, that is not anxiety-driven?
One of the things that you could do is actually adjust the way that you are looking at this trip. Not necessarily by the fact of how much it costs, because that's not going to change inside your mind. But for example, leaving work at home, being able to leave these things behind as you go on your vacation or your traveling trip, making sure everything at home is okay before you leave, so that you don't have to think about them while you're on the trip.
Now let's talk about relationships and how travel can affect a person's relationship with either their significant other, a family member, or even a friend. Now Aaron, when it comes to traveling, do you think your relationships with those people around you, do you think it strengthens them, or does it bring out the worst in people whenever you're in a situation where traveling to a new place is involved?
That is such a good question because it can go both ways. But I think in the best case scenario, where you're able to travel with a proper mindset and an open mind, it will lead to growth and realization and ultimately, I think, more emotional maturity. And I think when you bring that back to your loved ones, you should be a better person for it and as a result have better relationships with the people around you.
So the benefits of travel don't end when that trip ends, but it can foster for a long time after that. But don't pack your bags yet. There are still some possibilities that traveling may not be the best option for your mental health. We'll explain right after the break, so stay tuned. This is Medtalk, Health Talk.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to Medtalk, Health Talk. While travel is generally an enjoyable experience and can provide some positive effects, it can also cause us stress and anxiety for that matter. I'll ask Aaron this one. What are some of the sources of stress and anxiety that are common whenever people travel?
Okay, I can actually boil this down personally to two because despite how much I've traveled, I still feel a lot of travel anxiety. The first source of stress is just, I think, in transit. Riding planes, going through immigration, customs, that always gives me anxiety, just the crowds at the airport, all of the checks, all the delays that could happen. And these are things that we don't really control and things that we just have to accept that, when I'm going to travel, this is the price of traveling. The second is inherent in travel as well. It's just when you travel, especially if you go on an adventure, unexpected things happen. That's what an adventure is. And in terms of that, I think we have to change our mindset and treat that as good stress, like exercise. And stress that will help us to grow and become better travelers and better people.
With COVID-19 restrictions on traveling loosening up as we approach the latter half of the year, it is understandable that people who stayed at home for the last few years can feel uneasy when traveling during the pandemic. In some cases, the thought of going somewhere new is enough to give someone anxiety and may be a trigger for some when traveling. Now, Luis, how has COVID-19 affected traveling in regards to people's mental state when traveling today?
people in general, no, or the entire populace has become a little more introverted lately, in the sense that we've kind of forgotten, not necessarily forgotten, but having difficulty interacting or connecting outside. So sometimes trying to exit these comfort zones may be difficult for some people when they would want to travel because they've been so used to their home. It's just a new adjustment period again for certain people. For others, it's a great experience, but for others, it might be a stressful experience altogether.
Now, Aaron, with this pandemic with us, and hopefully we're at the tail end of it, has it affected your outlook whenever you do set a trip to travel to? Are there extra precautions that you take? Are there certain places that you try to avoid because of COVID-19?
I would say not so much because of COVID-19 specifically, especially because other countries are much more even liberal than us when it comes to their policies now. But I think the important thing with regard to the pandemic's effect is we have to be even more studious now. We have to be even more prepared.
I think a key factor there is being prepared, which we'll be talking about later on in the show. Now, Luis, how about people who were anxious already about getting sick, having germophobia even before the pandemic started? Now that the pandemic is a fact of life, how can that not be a hindrance to them being able to get out of their house?
When we were talking about these fears, now maybe fears of getting or catching something, maybe COVID or maybe something else, no? We just have to first off prepare. Like we know that there's a pandemic going on. So we just have to prepare first off, like constantly wearing our face mask, washing our hands, no? Making sure that we are doing these things as part of a habit. And once we feel more secure knowing that even if there are risks in exposure, so long as we're following the proper protocols, we're following the proper procedures, it gives us that sense of confidence in being able to still do other parts of our life. COVID-19 is really going to become a part of our life now. That's why we're here in the new normal. So it's just something that we just have to accept as part of our lives. And so long as we are maintaining social distance and at the same time following the protocols, then generally we should be fine.
Now, Aaron, I'd like to ask you, since you're a seasoned traveler, I see that you travel in different modes, not only by automobile, but you travel by motorcycle as well, which may limit what you can carry. So when it comes to your health, what are some of the basic things that you do carry with you wherever you go?
Well, definitely in terms of health, of course, there's always the hand sanitizer or the alcohol. I always have sets of extra masks and also a reusable mask because, again, in the course of travel, especially by road, you can easily lose your mask. But definitely, I always just carry a little pouch that has a lot of the most essential meds I might need, meds that will really be important to provide relief. For me, it's my antihistamine. It's a little bit of painkiller, stuff for headaches, stuff for feeling car sick. Also lots of water, definitely. And with that, I haven't really faced a situation. On motorcycles, you definitely need a first aid kit also.
So definitely a form of hydration anywhere you go is a plus. Now, traveling isn't a universal solution. Traveling can be a good experience, but going through with it in the hopes of it curing your mental health isn't guaranteed. When we return, we'll give you some tips on what to do before you take that next step out the door. We're your partner in health. This is Medtalk, Healthtalk.
Ito ang RBN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to Medtalk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. Culture shock, poor planning, and decision making can make the point of a trip backfire on you if you aren't careful, which is why making the proper preparations before a trip is vital and it is absolutely necessary. It's also important to be physically and mentally sound before leaving. Now, Aaron, when it comes to traveling, obviously it is part of your life, it is very important. But how important is your physical health? How important is it that everything is set at home? whenever you do travel?
It's so important. I'm glad you mentioned those two specific things. Oh, of course, anybody can travel regardless of your, I guess, your physical state. But being able to travel, especially when you're physically fit, is like one of the true pleasures of life. Again, we were made to move. And when you travel when you're fit, you can just go further. You can last longer. You can see things that will be less accessible if you need to hike. So it's so important. And talking about things at home, on the other hand, it's nice to go into travel, I guess, with as little negative baggage as possible, so you can really be fully present and really enjoying. Because if things aren't good at home, if you're stressing about work, then you can run away to the farthest country, but you're not running away, you're not getting away from what's inside you. So that's also equally important, those two things, to really be fully immersed and get the benefits from travel.
Now, Luis, my question for you, we've been talking about how preparation is key. But what about spontaneous travel? Is traveling, getting out of a certain situation with some form of spontaneity, is that healthy? Leaving everything behind and just going to travel on a whim?
There would be times when there would be just these sudden trips where you'd want to go to Tagaytay or just have a road trip somewhere else. And these spontaneous trips can provide you with those new memories that last you a lifetime. These experiences, these feelings that you go through, maybe by yourself, maybe with other people, they're all very, very much positive. But it doesn't always mean that we should always just leave things behind, no? We still have responsibilities. For example, we don't just suddenly up and leave when we know we have a big event coming, because that could be stressful for you or for other people at the same time. So spontaneity is okay, but while also being considerate at the same time.
Could you explain a little bit further to our viewers when traveling should be healthy so that it doesn't fall in the realm of escapism or people trying to look for an out towards responsibility, for that matter?
So for us to be able to determine that, or when I have sessions with clients or when I talk to people, one thing that I always ask them is, what is your reason for doing this? What is the motivation? There are some people who say, I just really miss traveling. I really want to go out. I really want to do something. If it's something that you really want, it's not necessarily escapism. But for example, if the answer is something close to, I'm just so stressed kasi talaga with everything that's going on in my life and I just want to go away from it. I want to take some time away from it. Well, that is perfectly okay at the same time. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't take breaks. When the focus is too much about, rather than confronting or being able to go through with what it is that you have to go through, and rather you want to withdraw instead, that's when it starts to become escapism. So it's really a lot of introspection.
So it's definitely important that you know or you are aware of the reasons for your travel to reap the maximum benefits from that. Now, I'd like to talk to you, Aaron, about emergencies, because a lot of people travel, they don't really think about what could go wrong. They're trying to be positive with their travels. But what are some of the more important things that our viewers should be wary about, of course, when it comes to emergency situations?
Fortunately, I've never had to face that situation, but for me, I guess like the minimum thing you can do, which is a requirement anyways, always have your travel insurance and any other health insurance you might have on top of that. And you can always stay informed about kind of the security and health situation at the place you're going to. Talk to locals if necessary. I wouldn't say avoid all risk because that's part of travel, but if you're going to take the risk, then be prepared. And just be as smart as you can be and you'll have a great trip. In all my years of travel, I haven't really encountered a really bad situation, fortunately.
Now, Luis, for our viewers who have seen the pictures that Aaron has, they might be intimidated on trying to enjoy the travel because they might associate enjoying travel as being adventurous. I'm not adventurous. I won't be able to enjoy travel. Is this a case? Does someone need to be adventurous in order to enjoy traveling?
It depends on what kind of traveling you're doing, but the overall answer that I would give is no. You don't need to necessarily be adventurous. You could be as calculated as you want. Sometimes traveling is not just the hiking, the going to a different destination where you're just unfamiliar. Sometimes traveling is going back constantly to somewhere that you are familiar with. For example, staying at a very relaxing resort or a spa where you could just be away from your daily life. That in itself can be the essence of traveling, being away from your daily grind, no? So if one just prefers to just stay in like on the beach side, or stay somewhere that's surrounded by nature, maybe in a cabin somewhere, that's also perfectly fine. And you don't need to be too adventurous to go that way. The only real requirement that you would need to travel is just being able to sometimes step out of your comfort zone so you can experience many things.
Now, before we go, Aaron, do you have any advice, any tips for our viewers who are thinking about traveling?
Absolutely. I would say, any reason to travel is the best reason to travel. Get inspired, find places that you want to go, and then just go.
Then, Luis, your advice for our viewers?
Just do whatever you want to do at that time. There is no necessarily shoulds other than preparing for yourself, making sure everything is safe. Just remember to enjoy your trip. That's the whole essence of it naman.
Yes, that is true. Thank you so much, Luis Angelo Villaruel and Aaron Palabiab, for being with us today and sharing your insights about traveling. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we'll see you again next time on Medtalk, Health Talk.